Hello, good evening, and welcome to another podcasty thing. First of all, Andrew, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but unfortunately, Rebecca is unable to make it tonight. She sends her regrets. She's feeling unwell, so look, her health is the most important thing. So I'm sure you'll join me in wishing Rebecca a full and speedy recovery to good health. So you've just got me for the next whatever amount of time I'm here for, folks. So I hope you can handle that. So anyway, we got loads to talk about. We're going to talk about what I wanted to talk about, which what Rebecca and I had agreed to talk about. We'll chat about that, and hopefully, by the way, Rebecca will be back on the stream later in the week. So that's the that's the layout. What a week! I mean, hi Jeanette, Ozzy, Andrew, Chris, Matrix, all you guys joining. Thank you very much. Keep spreading the word. We got to make sure that as many people as possible join in this. This is as much your time as my time, so that's how I like you to look upon it. Hi, Ellie and Jeff and Harry and Wendy. Thank you all for being here with me, and Daniel as well. Well, Daniel, it's just me you've got to contend with tonight. So I thought what we'd start off with is so much to start off with. And really and truly, let me start at the very beginning, which is a very good place to start, as you all should know. Now then, let me give you a headline from just about an hour ago. So in case you missed it, let's start off here. And as you can see, the Irish Cabinet have agreed to impose level 5 restrictions for 6 weeks from Wednesday. So you say, level 5, what does level 5 mean for Ireland? Let's check. This is what a level 5 means. So level 5 for 6 weeks means nobody permitted to visit your house. No gatherings except for funerals or weddings. And the weddings, you can have 6 people at your wedding. Well, that's going to be a small wedding. Obviously, no receptions. No indoor gatherings of any sort. Sports events, curiously, they've decided to allow GAA matches and GAA matches and other elite sports. So that's an interesting one. Bars and cafes and restaurants are all closed apart from takeaway food or delivery. So coming into the holiday season, approaching Christmas, that's going to work out really well. Wet pubs can only be open if they offer a takeaway or delivery service. Domestic travel, you've got to stay at home. I think it's within 5 kilometers of your house. I think it's roughly that anyway. That's the distance you're allowed to travel. And public transport, you should avoid public transport at all times. So that's level 5 restrictions in Ireland. What do you make of that then, folks? Do you fancy some of that? Do you fancy some of the good level 5? Meanwhile, of course, the government has said that they've done this reluctantly. No, they haven't. And furthermore, as Marie makes it clear, killing the economy, it's all in the plan. You're dead right, Marie. I mean, this is an economy killer. This is demolishing the Irish economy in the run up to Christmas. And of course, what it means is that the Irish high streets are going to be essentially shut. The only stores that will remain open will be essential supermarkets and the like. So you're going to see further hemorrhaging of jobs, more misery. Because just think about this. Actually, Chris brings a point up here. Dublin will never recover. I think, Chris, that's the objective of this. They don't want Dublin to recover, or indeed anywhere else. And we're going to come on to talk about everywhere else. Because the reason I wanted to start off with Ireland is because I believe that this 6-week lockdown in Ireland is just symptomatic of what's going to come for the rest of us. So, if it's by no means going to be, I believe, just what's happening in the Irish Republic. But for all my Irish friends, I feel really sorry for you. I'm sorry that your government has let you down. I'm sorry that the opposition parties in the Irish Parliament have supported this measure. Oh, what a surprise. And I'm sorry for the inevitable unemployment that this will create, the misery. And, on a dark, this is what time is it? Just 7 minutes past 8 on a dark October night. And the nights will get darker and the days will get longer and darker. And in every sense of the word, I think it's pretty appalling what's happening to my friends in the Irish Republic. If you watched myself and Fiona Marie Flanagan last week, we did talk about this, and it was pretty obvious that this was in fact what was coming. And oddly enough, we predicted it and it's happened. But of course, it's not just Dublin, it's not just Ireland, because, oh look, we have Wales being going into what's called laughably a firebreak lockdown from Friday. Firebreak lockdown. You gotta love the cutesy phrases, don't you? Firebreak lockdown. Yeah, this has been announced by the Labour administration, of course. As you can see, we have the clown standing here with his Welsh language sign behind him, because that's ever so significant and ever so important. But Wales is going into a 2-week lockdown. I mean, aren't they scaredy cats? Because, Northern Ireland, we've gone into a 4-week lockdown. And it looks like with the Irish Republic going into a 6-week lockdown. I think the Welsh, they're just not brave enough, are they? Yes, screwing the Welsh economy for a couple of weeks, that's probably not brilliant. But then this is the Labour administration, and Labour administrations don't really care about things like the economy, because they don't understand the economy. That's why they're Labour administrations. However, Chris says, what will Cranky do now? She'll be in the back foot. Yeah, the Irish have kind of gone one up on Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland. And if I have any Scottish viewers on the stream here, and I suspect I might, I hope I do, you'll be aware that obviously Sturgeon has thrown Scotland into an Oliver Cromwellian dry season ahead of Christmas. But will she be moved to extend it now and increase it further? Because I think this is almost a game, and this is a game. Lots of you folks that can see this. They're all in lockstep with each other. Ireland does it today. Well, Wales does it this morning. Ireland does it later. And Jackie makes a point. It's horrendous actions in Wales. Well, absolutely is. I feel again. This is going to this is going to shock Wales' economy even further. And but I'd be interested to see what wee Cranky does up in Scotland. Will she decide, right, that's it, the Irish are going into 6 weeks, we're going into 8 weeks. In fact, we're going into permanent lockdown because you can't be too safe. I have to say, I was actually out this afternoon in a shopping centre, and it was kind of depressing. It was a busy shopping. It was busy-ish. It's Monday, so maybe shopping centres aren't that busy. But I was the only person not wearing a mask. There was a lot of people in the shopping centre. They were all good little mask wearing people, and it's kind of sad to see this incredible compliance to something which no garden centre today, Aussie, no, but I was in the shopping centre, and when I have been back in the garden centre, the famous garden centre from which the police visited me afterwards, so I had to instruct them in the COVID regulations. It is actually, Jackie, you're right, it is probably a race to the bottom. It's who can bottom out their economy first. I think that's kind of where we are, which is really, really weird behaviour. But so we have all this kind of economic self-detonation going on in Ireland. We have it in Northern Ireland. We have it in Scotland. But of course, what I wanted to talk about was tonight was the battle for Manchester. because as you will have seen, there's quite a thing happening up there. Now, breaking news, the latest Manchester talks ended with no agreement. So you may say, oh, what, Andy's holding out? Yes. Andy Burnham has been given an ultimatum. The government, apparently, Boris is promising him millions from Manchester. So all he has to do is accept the bribe from Boris and move Manchester into Tier 3, along with Liverpool, which is already in Tier 3. But Burnham, seemingly at this point, isn't prepared to move until he gets enough money. But this is my problem with it. See, my problem with Burnham is, if he was on principle saying that he opposes lockdowns, I would support him. But he's not saying that. What he's saying is, I need to see the evidence, blah, 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 to prove that if we lock down pubs and restaurants, it will reduce the R rate. And he is also seemingly haggling over the amount of compensation that will be paid to Mancunian businesses. Now, he denies that this is all about money, but I'm really not sure about that, because like his leader, Keir Starmer, Labour's position on this, to my mind anyway, folks, is pretty unbelievable. Because if you consider, for example, consider what Sir Keir Starmer said. Let me just bring this up. Sir Keir said he pressed Boris Johnson on why he rejected a COVID circuit breaker. So think about this. This is Andy Burnham's boss, political leader anyway, telling Boris that really Boris was naughty because he didn't go with the so-called sage advice to impose a full national lockdown. So you see the problem. So we have Sir Keir saying that we should lock the whole country down. We have Andy Burnham saying, well, don't lock Manchester down unless you give me more money. But if you do want to lock Manchester down, you should lock everywhere down. Now, I think this is a pretty poor position. Jackie, I agree with you. On balance, it seems to me that he is holding out for cash, so he can turn around and he can turn around to the voters in Manchester and say, listen, I held firm against the tyrannical Boris and I got you more money. So Kim says lockdown circuit breaker is just NLP phrasing. Oh, absolutely. Just like firewall. These are just all phrases. Marie says we need to follow the Barrington Declaration. Well, of course, if you can't even find it, Marie, if you try to Google it for, I think the big tech isn't too keen on people talking about the Barrington Declaration and understanding that. But Jeff makes a very fundamental point. How about changing it from a circuit breaker to an economy breaker? Well, it is that, Jeff. I think it's also a people breaker. I think there will be many people who at this time in the year, and this, as Christmas is getting closer and closer, and there'll be many parents wanting to have the money to go to buy their kids Christmas things, Christmas presents and all that. And I think those kids are going to be disappointed because their parents for the next month, if they work in hospitality, if they work in tourism, in Ireland, if they work in everything apart from basically sort of food supermarkets and stuff, are going to be deprived of pretty much all income. So that's another problem with all of this. I think Anna says, hi Anna, nice to see you. Hate fence sitters holding out for more money. Sadly, money speaks to these people more than the needs of people. Yeah, but you see, one of the issues we have, Anna, on this one, and let's just consider this. I mean, you see, what can you believe anymore? I mean, who knows what to believe anymore? One of the reasons for these lockdowns, circuit breakers, is that, but the case numbers are spiraling out of control. I mean, it's a nightmare. The amount of COVID around is shocking. People are dying all over the place. I wanted to show you this. Now, this is something that the media trot out on the hour, every hour. They give you the headline number of deaths. Here we see from the UK government, 143 deaths reported in the latest 24-hour period. Now, what you'll hear is 143 deaths. Sometimes you'll hear reported in the latest 24-hour period. What you'll never hear is, do you see in very small writing at the bottom of the screen? These are 143 people who have sadly died for any reason within 20 days of a positive test. Meaning that those people, technically, someone could go out, be hit by a bus, and if they have a positive COVID-19 test, and we know how inaccurate the COVID PCR test is, then that death is attributed to COVID. So I don't know about you, but to me, this is a complete scam. And this is why people feel a lack of trust. It's like we can't trust the information we're being given. Do you believe? Yes, Jackie, context. That's all that matters. If someone dies, then we should be given the correct information that enables us to determine what that cause of death is. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We're just being told it's a COVID death, but that's not strictly speaking true. But even where you're given more information, let me show you this. This relates to my own neck of the woods, okay? So I'm going to just flag this up because there were several deaths with COVID in the last 28 days in Northern Ireland. I'm just going to flick up the detail. Look at this. These are the deaths. A man over the age of 80 died in the Causeway Coast. A woman also over 80 died. 2 other men died, both over the age of 80. Can you see where this one's going? These are sadly very elderly people. Sadly elderly people who pass. And this time of the year, when we're moving into flu season, although flu seems to have disappeared for most of 2020, by the way, that's a coincidence, isn't it? These are very elderly people, and unfortunately, death happens. Anna Red says, "Is this accurate? Are they telling the truth?" Well, they're not. The manipulation of deaths is something absolutely shocking. And Marie, I'm not sure if civil war is coming or not, but I do think that people are getting more and more uncomfortable about the information that we are being provided, which provides the cover for the decisions that we're seeing. I mean, Daniel makes a point here. Are we enjoying global governance yet? Well, Daniel, whether we enjoy it or not, we seem to be getting something that looks remarkably like it. And Chris makes another good point. This is why I love the stream, by the way. Hospital has 10 beds for COVID. Hospital fills 10 beds with COVID. Hospital puts out statements saying hospital at COVID capacity. Absolutely, Chris. And this is the case actually in my own major hospital, where they say they have, I think, 55 COVID patients in the hospital. And because of that, 55 patients in the COVID hospital, in the COVID ward, they really need to ask people to stop going into hospital. Think about that. So, okay, this is a major hospital. They have more than 55 beds. Of the people who are in the 55 beds, how many of them are exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19? Are they asymptomatic? If they do have symptoms, what is the treatment for the symptoms? This is the problem. This, again, speaks to the trust issue. For me, it's all about trust. And, as you folks can understand, if you cannot trust the official figures, then you have to ask the question, why are we being misled? And I feel that the answer is that we're being misled because there's an agenda in place and it's being absolutely ruthlessly pursued. And one of the reasons it's being absolutely pursued is because people comply. People go along with it. Those restrictions, I mean, I put up those restrictions earlier. You saw them, the Irish restrictions. I'll flip them up again for a second. Look at those restrictions. You're being told you're not allowed any visitors in your house for 6 weeks, right? No visitors in your house for 6 weeks. People will comply to that. People will. Now, the only thing I saw that gave me a bit of hope was I put up a video clip on one of my other platforms showing Grafton Street, who I know some of you will be familiar with Grafton Street. It runs right down the centre of Dublin's Fair City, and I believe it was either last night or Saturday night. Anyway, Grafton Street was buzzing with young people out dancing and singing in the street, as it should be. When you're young, that's what you should be doing. Not at my age, but when you're young, you should do those things. And the Matrix makes the point, as the narrative fails, they will activate riots under the cover of anti-lockdown. Well, on that subject, I might add, did you see the footage I put out on Parler and on my Alt News Media Facebook, which showed the lockdown skeptics rally in Belfast on Sunday afternoon being broken up by the police? Yes. Apparently, you're not allowed to have more than 15 people demonstrate. To do more than that incurs the wrath of the police service, means you get arrested, means you get fined, and can have obviously a huge impact on your life. That happened in Belfast yesterday. Now, my one suggestion to those people was who were, and I couldn't be at it because of other reasons, but I was at the last one. And my view there is they should have said they were all Black Lives Matters activists. And also, when the police, in one occasion, I actually showed this, about 6 police officers kind of knocked the lady to the ground. And one of them, I thought he had his knee on her neck. Now, let's remember when a knee was applied to the neck of a career criminal in Minneapolis called George Floyd. Do you remember? That caused a national movement, an international movement. But a lady is knocked over by several police officers, roughly mishandled. Anything could have happened to her. It's not a biggie. It's not an issue. Don't worry about it. That's the sort of problems that we're facing. And this actually does speak into this issue of public unrest, because it's almost like we're not allowed to protest against lockdown. We have to accept whatever the politicians say, whatever the politicians determine. That doesn't feel terribly democratic to me. Don't know about you, but from my perspective, I think, if COVID means we don't have any freedom anymore, then that's the biggest loss, not the loss of lives, the loss of freedom, the loss of liberty. Now, I see someone saying here, if people can't see now there's a sinister agenda playing out, they never will. You see, I'm not sure about that, if I can, and let me explain why I think that's the case. If people continue to watch the mainstream media, the narrative is absolutely set in stone. The narrative is, well, yes, we had the pandemic back in March and April, and then it faded, then it started to go away a bit, but now it's come back worse than ever, and that's why we need to have more lockdowns. That's the legacy media narrative. Lots of people follow the legacy media narrative. They don't listen to me. They don't listen to you. They're not on necessarily Twitter. They're not on Facebook. They're not on YouTube. I see another one of my friends here saying, yes, shocking scenes on Sunday at Stormont. The police service were heavy-handed and appeared to break up a peaceful protest. Yep, absolutely. They most definitely did. Shameful, and yet that's where we are, isn't it? Anna says here that the UK and the US mirror each other. That we've been in lockdown for 8 months, just now barely opening some businesses. Well, of course, in the States, Anna, the reality is that if you're in a blue state, if you're in a Democrat state, it's in the interests of those partisan Democrat governors and mayors to wreck their economy. Yeah, I mean, that I find that pretty shocking. That's one reason why I really, really hope President Trump prevails and we get him back in the White House. Because if President Trump does not go back into the White House, every American's going into masks outside for 3 months. All businesses will close down for 3 months, or so Joe Biden says. Now, in fairness, he might forget that because he appears to regularly forget who he is. So perhaps he can't remember he won't be able to remember his pre-election pledges. But It's certainly very concerning times that we're living in at the moment, and I can understand why a lot of people feel very anxious and very concerned about it, and so do I. Of course, I share in this anxiety. People say, "Well, what are you going to do about it? It's all right for just talking about it." What can we do other than keep speaking truth? Keep. What we shouldn't do is we shouldn't deny the evidence of our own eyes. It's perfectly obvious there's no pandemic at this point in 2020. Yes, we're in late autumn or mid-autumn in October. Yes, autumn heralds in the respiratory diseases. They all come back every year. They vanish in the northern hemisphere, summer mostly, and they reappear at this point. So it's perfectly natural that flus appear, people get bad, heavy colds, all those kind of conditions reoccur. And so it is, what we're seeing is predictable. But one of the things that also surprises me, and I'm not sure what your experience is here on the stream, but the amount of COVID testing centers popping up is unbelievable. There's one, the major hospital I was talking to you about, they've got a COVID testing center in one of their big car parks about a mile away. About a mile away. Because I saw it the other day on Saturday. There's another huge COVID testing center. So the amount of people getting COVID tests is enormous, I reckon. And because the government won't be honest with us and they won't tell us what the false positive rate is on the PCR test, they don't want to talk about that. Why won't they talk about that? If they would, why are they afraid to provide us with information? Well, we all know the reason. If they provide us with the information, then we might question. If we question, then we might stop going along with everything that they say. Chris is saying here, there's 5 in Blackburn and they're all empty. Is that 5 hospitals, Chris, or is that 5 COVID centers? Or I wonder what that might be. You'll excuse me for having a drink of fizzy pop here, but it keeps the vocal cords going for during the duration of this here. I kind of feel that the whole integrity of coronavirus stroke COVID-19 has been fundamentally compromised by politicians, by the media, and the media we cannot condemn strongly enough, and by certain celebrities and the rest of it who all play along with the whole thing. And actually, Matrix is dead right. It's case harvesting centres. You're dead right. I think that's happening across the UK, by the way. They're absolutely driving the number of cases by virtue of the number of tests. But then they won't tell us of the tests, how many asymptomatic people are being picked up. So there's nothing, another word for asymptomatic is otherwise healthy. And we don't know, and since we're not told what level of infection they have, if any, is it so low that it can't be passed on? We're not told these things. Basically, everybody, just like everyone who's died, just like I put up earlier, you saw that slide I put up, just like any death for any reason within 28 days of a positive test is a COVID death. By the same token, any positive test that appears is instantly translated as that means it's an infection, but it may not be an infection. Yes, some may be, but it may not be. And so in the interest of scientific validation, we have to have this kind of information. Jeff, Trump was right when he said stop testing so much. But the reality is that the test level are going to keep going up and going up. In the UK, folks, Boris said the other day, he wants to get to the point where they're doing 1 million tests a day. Now, I think it's about 250,000 at the moment. So trust me, if they get to 250,000 tests a day, they're going to record huge numbers of cases, so-called cases. What they will then do is they will say, oh, This is worse than March and April. This is absolutely pandemic. It's out of control. We're going to have to lock you down. And that's exactly where I think we are. Lee says, I'm beginning to think everyone would be positive if tested. Well, actually, Lee, you don't even have to be positive if tested to be finding yourself self-isolating. I'm aware of someone who went for a COVID test a couple of days back, but 3 or 4 days ago. They went in to be tested because they'd met another person who had tested positive, whatever that means. So they went along, got their test. The test came back negative. Okay, so they tested negative. They were then told not to bother coming to their place of work because it's always possible that just because you tested negative now, the infection might be in you, and so it might come through in the next couple of days. Think about that. How could that happen? That just couldn't happen. You've just tested negative. You haven't got the coronavirus in you. You can't conceivably then, a couple of days later, test positive. But that's where we are. That's an actual case, you know. So, I know that they're shutting down YouTube channels in their hundreds, thousands, or whatever. However, I think what we're trying to do in my channel is have certainly a reasoned debate and ask fundamental questions such as, what is the false positive rate? That's a reasonable question. What is the number of flu cases? How does that relate to the number of COVID cases? How, for example, are the hospitals distinguishing between the two? I'd like to know that. I'd like to know if those very elderly people who are dying within the last 28 days, having had a positive coronavirus test, were there other comorbidities? What were those other comorbidities? For example, if someone's got stomach cancer and sadly they pass away at an elderly age, but they also have tested positive for COVID, what killed them? Was it the stomach cancer or was it the COVID? These are all perfectly scientific reason and questions that we should ask. And I don't see why anyone should be afraid to ask them. If we don't ask questions like that, we're being absolutely corralled into a dystopian hellhole. And so for that reason alone, I think it's important to do these kind of things, you know, and I hope you agree with me, folks. And that's one of the reasons I do this. And Daniel says it's not a test as per Carrie Mullen. Isn't it a bit of luck that Carrie Mullen died before they took his test and warped it out of all perception? That's a bit of luck, isn't it? Anyway, moving on. I wanted to move on a bit because, of course, we shouldn't just, it's not just COVID, although it is mostly COVID, but it's not just COVID. I wanted to talk to you about, actually, one thing before I go. I wanted to show you this picture. Here he is, Marie Antoinette, aka Matt Hancock, seen in his chauffeur-driven car without mask. What's that you say? Matt Hancock in a chauffeur-driven limo, but without a mask. But the government, his own government, have legislated that anyone in a taxi, or in this case, a chauffeur-driven car, should wear a mask. So Matt Hancock, why are you not wearing a mask? In fact, Matt Hancock, tell us more about the drinking in the House of Commons bar after 10 o'clock. You seem reluctant. I'm sure there's a good reason for it, but you did seem quite reluctant to answer the simple question. Were you one of those engaging in after-hours drinks at the same time as the rest of the country has been turned into this 10 p.m. latest, if you're lucky, going to the pub? Or if you live where I live, you can't go to the pub because the pubs are closed. And if you live in Ireland, you're not going to the pub for the next 6 weeks because the pubs are closed, unless you go for a takeaway. What's a takeaway in a pub, by the way? Does that mean you go for a pint of Guinness to walk out with? How does that work? I don't know. I think it's food. It must mean. It can't conceivably mean. Yes, Lee. I'm just reading your comments here. Lee says he is wearing a mask. It just looks like he wasn't in the bar. Just like he wasn't in the bar. Yeah, because as you can clearly see, Matt, good old Matt, clearly in this picture is wearing a mask. I think it's an invisible one, though, and that's why, or it's maybe toned in with the skin color, and that's why you can't see it. But I, for one, trust every word that Matt Hancock says. He's a kind of reliable guy, isn't he? Anyway, moving on. I wanted to tackle another topic. So it's just not all about Brexity stuff. So what I wanted to talk to you about was Brexit, because of course Brexit's still a thing. It's still there, and I wanted to talk about our wonderful clerical leaders. Yes. Now, I want to just share this screen with you if I can. And here you go. And as you can see, folks, look at this. Brexit. Anglican leaders issue internal market bill warning. Oh my God, what could this mean? Yes, the leaders of the UK's Anglican churches have warned the government that its new Brexit bill could set a disastrous precedent. It could damage the relationship between the UK's four nations, say the Archbishops of York and Canterbury, and the heads of the church in Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. So just scrolling through this down, yes, as you can see here, look, the religious leaders raised concerns about the potential impact that legislation could have on the Good Friday Agreement, on which peace and stability in Northern Ireland depends on. Out of interest, does anybody take any of that guff in any way seriously? Because it's the most contemptible garbage I've heard, even by the standards of these left-wing liberal clerics in a long time. First of all, I'm just reading your comments here. Actually, yes, you're right there. Could, or maybe it won't. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. It's at that. This is the UK government basically exercising some small degree of muscle against the European Union. And this upsets the clerics profoundly. And Jackie makes a very good point. What exactly is it to do with them? You're right, Jackie. I'd like to know what exactly is it to do with them. Nothing. But remember, they're hurt, their emotions, their feelings were hurt when we voted to leave the European Union. George says the church have been occupied. Oh, I agree 100% with that one. I'm pretty sure that the church are occupied. In fact, actually, a couple of interesting comments. Kim says, I was a regular Church of England attendee until they rejected the Bible. Well, actually, it might interest you, for what it's worth, to realize I was actually born into the Church of Ireland. And my family went there for many years, but not any longer. And all kinds of reasons for that. One of which is the Church of Ireland, amongst most other major religions, endorsed the Belfast Agreement, aka Good Friday Agreement, an agreement which rewarded terrorists. That's not a very religious thing to do, is it? That's not a very Christian thing to do. But the Church of Ireland nonetheless was there all the way to do it. But now they're basically saying the British government can't stand up to the European Union. And I have to say that gives me great concerns for whatever is left in the Church of England and the likes of Welby. I mean, these guys are sopping liberals, one after another, of these archbishops of Canterbury. They're all creatures of the establishment, of the liberal establishment. And at the moment, you're right, they've been bought off by the state. Yeah, I mean, actually, here's an interesting one. Matrix sticks up. Did you see the happened in London, Chadwell Heath, I think, where a man jumped up in the kind of entrance of a church and brought tried to destroy the cross on it yesterday. Yeah, I saw that. What struck me was, yes, indeed, the vicar turned around and said, look, it's one of these things. It can happen. Don't worry. The main thing is that the man may have been mentally unwell. Just like, is that a bit like the guy who decapitated the teacher in France last week was mentally unwell? I mean, why are these clerics in so many instances, why are they afraid to speak the truth? If these clerics had anything about them, they would not be involving themselves in things and a determination by the British people to leave the European Union. They wouldn't do that. if they did, but they'd be actually concerning themselves with trying to save the souls of their congregations. But the truth is, in most of the churches, the congregations have gone. The pews the pews sit empty. I think that's very sad, by the way. I lament the decline of the established churches, but it's well deserved. They get everything that they deserve because for so many years, in my view, they've gone against Christianity. So the fact that more latterly they go against Brexit or they'll go against, they're very pro-COVID. And that's a problem I've got. You see, one of the things about if you have faith, you should presumably not be afraid of death. If you're a Christian, then you're not. The idea is, as I understand it, you're not scared of death. But these churches, they religiously, if you'll pardon the pun, they enforce the COVID regulations. So I'm not sure. I think in a lot of churches, people wear masks going in. They take the masks off during the service and they put the masks back on again as they exit the church. But in some churches, I don't believe singing hymns is allowed because of the dangers of passing COVID. But I don't think there's any evidence of that, is there? Have we got any scientific data that proves singing a hymn or even speaking the Lord's Prayer out loud, does that spread COVID? Isn't it funny, the things that spread COVID and things that don't spread COVID? Isn't it strange that, for example, Black Lives Matter protests don't spread COVID? Isn't it odd how Extinction Rebellion street protests don't spread COVID? But if you're objecting to lockdown, that could spread COVID. If you go to church to sing praise to God, that spreads COVID. Now, call me old-fashioned, but I'm seeing a bit of a contradiction in there. And, Anna's right. She says the church's leaders have become political and they've gone away. The left wants us to be secular countries void of religion. I think that's right, Anna, up to a point. But there is one religion that does seem to be prospering in the UK and in the States and in other parts of the Western world. But that's a conversation for another day. I think interesting point here. Antoine Giorgio says, I think Brexit is irrelevant if we don't climb out of this corona hoax. What's the point in freedom if you don't have personal freedoms? I understand your point. Lee says, standing up in a pub spreads COVID. Yes, but apparently going into a coffee shop to take a carry out doesn't. I walked past a Starbucks earlier today, and it's really bizarre. This was in the shopping center. The Starbucks had removed all the seats, so you could. So they were doing takeaways, but there was nowhere you couldn't sit down in the Starbucks. Now, I'm not sure how keen you are on Starbucks or Costas or any of near the different coffee shop brands, but I foresee that there will be major problems because lots of people, some people may want carry-outs, but I suspect most people, like myself, you go to a coffee place to sit down, have a cup of coffee and just relax. So it is it's very strange what's going on. But someone says, did you see the story about the... Yes, Ozzy, I'm very aware of that story. This was a Polish national who was impersonating a police officer. He was actually, what he was doing was, this will give you a laugh. This guy, so this was a Polish national who wasn't a police officer, but he was pretending to be a police officer. What he was doing was he was pulling people in and telling them that, they'd exceeded the speed limit or whatever, and that he was going to have to fine them. But if they gave him the cash, they wouldn't have to go to court. So it seemed quite a good scam in many ways. But there was a fatal flaw in his plan. So as he was pulling in motorists and scamming them out of cash, he pulled in an off-duty police officer who instantly recognized this wasn't a policeman. So this I guess you could call him entrepreneurial Paul, who's bringing much needed diversity to our economy, of course. I think he's been done by the police for impersonating a police officer. Now, Chris says there'll be no return to anything near normal for the next few years. That's if we ever go back. Well, Chris, I would tend to agree with you. I don't believe that normal, if they get their way, things will never go back to normal. All we're talking about is the degrees of abnormal. And the degrees of abnormal seem to be that, from here on in, wear masks until you get your vaccine, perhaps. And then travel is only going to be allowed for some people. Big sectors of the economy are going out the window. Feel so sorry for people in hospitality, in tourism, in certain other parts of retail. They're doomed. They really are doomed. I agree, by the way, we ain't going back. We ain't going back if they prevail. And Tigers Bay says that's if the people allow it, do not comply. Well, that's also a very valid point. And I think this is why government's nervous. You see, government could turn around tomorrow and have legislation that forces everybody to conform, right? But they don't quite go there, do they? And why do they not quite go there? Because they could. There's nothing to stop them if they want. And that is because they fear what might happen if they just go that extra way. So what they seem to be wanting to do is scare the bejeebers out of us because of the rising cases. The cases have to keep rising. Doesn't matter about the mortality number too much. Case-demic will do, and case-demic is working. You can see people were scared so much in March and April. Those people have been conditioned to live in fear. Chris actually, or Kim makes a good point. The cruise ship industry is finished. I think so. I can't see how that's ever going to get back. And actually, I know we've got some football fans on the stream here. I think live football is more or less finished, I think. I think that the days of 40, 50,000 people going into the stadium are gone and won't be coming back. I think you're getting grounds with, like, even in Northern Ireland here, the National Stadium, which is a small stadium, it only holds about 20,000 people. And yet last week, 500 people were allowed into a stadium of 20,000, and they had to sit apart, and they were told to sit down and not jump up lest they spread the virus. So, I don't actually see that sport as we know it is likely to come back. Could be wrong, but it doesn't seem like it to me. And I think when you see, for example, we've got the Six Nations, which didn't quite finish, the rugby. If anyone's a rugby fan like me, the Six Nations is going to finish in the next couple of weeks. But again, I don't believe there are going to be rugby fans in the stadium. So Chris I think live sports in general are finished. And actually, Chris, something I love that we both have, music. I think live music, to a significant degree, won't ever be the same again. Those opportunities to gather in big numbers and watch your favorite singer, your favorite group in a sweaty, loud concert hall, they're gone, and I don't think they're coming back. And the awful thing is that too many musicians seem to be wanting to go along with this entire great reset that we appear to be living through. Live sports is, I think, going to be a thing of the past largely. Live music is going to be probably a thing of the past. I think things like, going to the theater, those of you like me, I like to go to see, musicals and plays and stuff like that, comedies. I think that, in fact, comedy is actually going to be probably something that can't really continue because, again, if you bring people together, that's the end of days. There's Philo says ice hockey, which is the UK biggest indoor sport, is really struggling. One ice rink is closed and another may be gone soon. Yeah, absolutely right. Chris says the big festivals like Glastonbury are finished. I think so. I can't see any way that Glastonbury comes back. I also, by the way, don't see how things like Aintree, the Grand National meeting in Liverpool, can come back. I don't know how Cheltenham, which I was at earlier this year, I don't know how Cheltenham can come back. There's so many events, it's only when you start to think about them, you realize the scale of the new landscape that we're in. And Kim says Sky Sports profits are going to collapse. If the thing is, the curious thing about this is that the establishment seems to be quite prepared to let elite sporting events continue, Kim, which I find strange. So in Ireland, I'm telling you that in Ireland, basically the country's going into lockdown for 6 weeks. But GAA at professional level, I think, is still to continue. So it's like they realize that if we just shut down all sport, that's going to cause people to get annoyed. So we'll throw them that. So what we'll throw you the little sort of piece of tat that you can grasp onto. But it is bread and circuses, actually, yeah. And Anna's right, of course, again. The left want us to remain secluded. Much easier to wear us down that way. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. Being at home, stuck in front of a computer screen is the kind of is what they call the new normal. But what that does is, and this is why even this small thing we're doing tonight, hopefully it helps in one way. You're all real human beings. I'm a real human being. We're having a conversation. You can say to me what you want. I can say to you what I want. And that's the essence of our humanity. Now, it would be so much better if we were all sitting around one big, vast King Arthurian table. That would be even better. And we could all see each other. But this is the next best thing at any rate. But I do think you need human interaction, Anna, to buoy up the human spirit. And I don't know, I mean, I pick up from talking to people different things. And I do pick up that those of us who I guess we are the resistance, if you like, I guess our heads do go down a bit because we see all the compliance and we wonder how is this going to stop? Because how long before YouTube stopped closing you down, David? Don't know, but if they close me down, you'll be able to find me on BitChute. You'll be able to find me in Daily Motion. And of course, there are other, and Rumble as well. So we don't have to, I mean, the main thing for you folks, if you enjoy my kind of points of view, which I think echo your points of view, is just make sure you follow me on the right channels. So yes, Twitter took away my platform, but I'm still here. And if YouTube or even Facebook take away my channels, that's their right. I'm not sure how, Chris, because I'm very careful about what I say and do. But by the same token, I'm going to say what I believe to be the truth. And I welcome other people to speak their points of view. So I don't think I'm a kind of an unreasonable person. But then I wasn't unreasonable and all the haters on Twitter took me down, didn't they? I'm sure they're so happy in their little cesspool over there, by the way. It's somewhere I rarely frequent when I just pop onto it just to check to see what's going on over there. Not that I've got a Twitter account, of course. But anyway, yeah. So this is where we are, folks. We're living in this kind of world where Aldous Huxley's Brave New World meets George Orwell's 1984. It's not a nice place. It's a tough place. But we've got to be strong. And so what I would say to each and every one of you is, and I say we all have our moments, and I have my moments as well. But we've got to stay strong. We mustn't let them break our spirit. We mustn't accept everything that they tell us. We should question. We should query. We should challenge. We should inquire. We should share other informations. We should support each other. These are the things that we need to do. These are the things. Someone says not David Vance could be available. Well, Ozzy, I haven't been on not David Vance, but one of the things that interests me is, by the way, just on this one, Ozzy, this is at you. My friend Stefan Molyneux was taken down on YouTube unfairly, and Stefan had a very good channel, which I was a big fan of. But I noticed that another Molyneux resurrected channel has popped up on YouTube and seems to be putting out his content. So I often wonder what would happen if somebody, not me, set up a Twitter account, and that Twitter account, for example, posted little short video clips by me, for example. I wonder what would happen then. Angela, how lovely to see you. Thank you very much for being on the stream. Can I say, Angela, you're one of the people the only thing I miss about Twitter, I don't miss all the haters. I don't miss the awful things that people say and do and said to me and have done to me. Don't miss any of that. It's great not to be there, but I do miss all the good people. And I know many of you fall into that category. I think probably most of you have followed me over there. But hopefully, you will make the effort to follow, especially Alt News Media on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, you'll see that the Alt News Media Facebook channel has grown hugely in the past 4 weeks. Massive growth in that. And if you check it out, you'll see that I am posting there. I'm perfectly entitled to post there. And there's significant growth and content there. So if you enjoyed what I did on Twitter, then possibly go along and check Alt News Media and be a friend of it on Facebook. And as I said, Ozzy, if not David Vance exists, and let's be clear, it's definitely not me, but if that was to, for example, post video clips that I do, that would be awful. And that would annoy so many leftists, so many tender leftists, and it might hurt their feelings. So that would be something I would completely not approve of. Let's make that absolutely clear. But actually, yeah, thanks, Angie. It'd be great to see you. I mean, as I say, I miss I do miss so many of you folks. There were good people on Twitter. In fact, actually, I reckon for every awful person that hounded me, there was about 10 people that were really nice. But I know people get fixated on Twitter. I'm not so fixated on Twitter anymore at all. As I say, you'll find lots of content from me over in Parler. It just means you have to get off Twitter. And actually, Ozzy makes a really good point. Twitter is like the daily 2 minutes of hate out of 1984. It really is. Thanks, by the way, WJ Adrian Park. Don't always agree with you, but tune in anyhow. I appreciate that. Look, one of the things that I think differentiates us people from the lunatic fringes on all sides is I can accept that people won't agree with everything I say, and I don't agree with everything everyone else says as well. We're entitled to have our own points of view. Don't want it just to be a hollow echo chamber, But Jeanette, yes, don't forget Parler. You're dead right. I'm very keen with the growth I've got over in Parler. I'm approaching 45,000 people following me on Parler. Not bad. So whilst Parler is not the same as Twitter. No, it's not. It's very different. One of the things that's different is there are so many fewer haters over there. And I find that quite nice. I enjoy this because it's all civilized discussion. There's no trolls on this channel. My trolls always came from Twitter. And so, as I say, but thanks, Chris, by the way, for coming back. As I said, it's a solo run by me tonight. By the way, I'm hoping to do a live stream later this week with Anne-Marie Waters. So if any of you are fans of Anne-Marie, and she's a fantastic lady, then maybe tune in for that one. I think it's going to be Friday night. Well, I need to check, but I plan to do a stream with Anne-Marie. We haven't done one together in such a while. So much has happened. So look, that's pretty much it for me, folks. We're coming up to the end of the hour, but thank you very much for, yes, Ozzy, we can have adult conversations and we can agree to respect each other's differences. We can just agree to be reasonable. That's really all I ever want people to do. But being reasonable means that you do challenge and you do raise questions. You don't just accept and you don't just comply. So on that note, thank you very much for all of your kind comments. I see them here in the box. Thanks for sticking with me. And I will return, of course, this week. This is merely the first one. Hopefully, Rebecca will be back with me when she feels a little better. So I look forward to that as well. And catch up with you folks in the very, very near future. That's it from now, and speak soon. Bye-bye.